Hi everyone, it's Maddie Brady. We're here to get real about mental health. Stay tuned for some great conversations with some very special guests. Hi everyone, welcome to the Get Real Show. We are here with Evan from the 00 Social Club. Would love to hear a little bit about what exactly that is and what was your idea behind starting that.
Cool. Thanks for having me on. 00 Social Club is a platform for people to socialize and connect and have fun without alcohol, right? We do that in a couple of ways. Like one is we're building community. You know, Instagram is a sort of community, but we're also building community on a site called Geneva where people can kind of connect and chat interactively. Then the second part is we drive awareness and we promote alcohol alternative events and venues, restaurants, bars, cafes, fitness, like kind of the whole gamut that people can attend and check out. And then we're run a little bit of our own events. So I'm doing something called Sober Supper Club now. We can talk about it more later, but we do a little bit of our own events. And then the fourth way is just kind of like guides, tips, inspiration, things that are helpful for people as they're trying to sort through that somewhat challenging dynamic of socializing without alcohol.
Definitely. No, I think what's really unique about your site, I checked it out, compared to other people we've had on here, and I know a lot of people that are in some way in the sober space, is that you actually promote other people's events too. So not only are you doing your own events, but you're building a platform that, hey, we're doing this at the end of the month, but hey, this person is also doing this, so that people know where to go throughout the month, and that you're not just promoting your own events, but making a space where people can go to multiple different types of venues. And I've been to several of my guests as well that had different types of events, and they're also drastically different. So different events are for different people. So I think it's great that you actually have somewhat of a calendar to have people be able to check that out, especially, I was just saying, in the wintertime. I know it's hard for me to get out there, so having that list, it really gives you something to look forward to and sign up for and know what to do when you're sober.
Yeah. It's a platform, right? So we're trying to lift both sides, like the people, the businesses and the individuals and the brands and the creators that are kind of like out there doing it, making these events. And then, of course, for regular people, right? I hate calling people consumers, but I'm going to call it consumers. To find and access this stuff. And like, this is a pretty new phenomenon. Like this industry, like, kind of barely existed prior to, depending on when you start counting, 2018, 2019, and then really like grew a lot in kind of like 2021 and beyond, right? So there's a whole new industry, and it's a whole new dynamic, I think, that hasn't been very accessible to people prior to this. And so it's going to take a lot of work to like keep growing it and building it, and we want to help everybody on both sides kind of succeed. And so that's the that's the motivation for that. And then, as you said, like, people socializing and connecting, making friends, having fun, whatever, it can mean a lot of different things, right? There's like nightlife, and then there's various kinds of nightlife, but then there's also like doing a fitness class, going for coffee, going out to dinner, having lunch, going to like interest class, right? Like on crafts and hobbies. So there's all different ways people can socialize, and we want to help them kind of do all of it, right? Yeah. Whatever works for you.
Definitely. Do you feel like at the beginning of your sobriety that was something you struggled with? Like, now what do I do? And what do you feel like you first started doing when you got sober?
I don't know if I'm a good modifier. Yeah, I think I struggle with it a lot. I did a lot of things that people probably, gave me advice not to do, and I did them anyway, which is kind of my personality in general. So I learned some hard lessons that way, but I can tell you like a story. I think I was like 4 months sober, maybe 5 months, and there was a New Year's Eve party, and I was like, I'm going. Like, I don't care. I'm going. Big party, messy, lot of booze, fair amount of drugs. Like, it was, it was a proper, like, New Year's, like, bash. And I remember I was there, and I was definitely the only sober person there, and I remember being there, and I was like, I have no idea what to do with myself. Like, not the slightest idea what to do, right? Like, I don't know how to interact. I don't know whether I'm on this same wavelength. I don't know what I'm supposed to do, what's appropriate. So, very lost, right?
Yeah.
And, I think it was, in some ways, that's like a good lesson. I have many more stories, but like the extent to which we can help people have experiences that are a little more joyful, a little more fun, a little less lost, like that would be a goal.
Yeah, definitely. No, I had a very similar experience where I think it's trial and error. So I did all the things you shouldn't do as well, or at least are advised. But I do think that it's different for everyone, and some people don't struggle. Like for me, I didn't really struggle. I struggled in the sense that I felt awkward, but I wasn't going to relapse or lose my sobriety being in that situation. I just felt extremely uncomfortable, and then the more I did it, the easier it got. But I mean, in beginning of sobriety, I was going out and slamming like 9 sugar-free Red Bulls type of thing, just to try to, I guess, feel something or some type of party. So it's definitely drastically changed, and I'm sure that you've seen throughout your sobriety the industry completely change, because I'm only hitting 5 years in a couple weeks, and it's drastically different the past 5 years. So it must be definitely weird for you, who has so much time under their belt, to have so much time prior to the change and now seeing it completely shift.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird and it's cool. I think in some ways I was waiting for this. Like, the as far as like, first of all, I drank a lot of Red Bulls. I've slammed a lot of Red Bulls. Of course, people do that, and in different ways, right? The Dry Atlas actually has a cool article about the psychology of having something in your hand when you're socializing, and like how important that is. As both, there's like a physiological distraction and a kind of like psychological participation mechanism that happens subconsciously. So like now with this explosion of like the NA drinks, you can have something that's more adult than cranberry and seltzer. And I think that was one of the things that I really struggled with, is like in pretty much prior to these drinks being available. So you're really thinking about, I mean, I guess Seedlip launched in like 2015, give or take, but didn't really take until a few years later. And then like it's really 2020 you're starting to see the growth of like all these drinks, right? Yeah. So like prior to that, in any, like, of course, if you go to a bar, but also if you're at an event, if you're at a wedding, a bachelor or bachelorette party, if you're at a restaurant, like pretty much in any environment, when you went out, it was like you could have seltzer, water, a soda, like all of it in the end is like pretty infantilizing, it's like, here you go, baby, like here's your baby drink, like and I hated that, but I really, like, I have to say I resented that also, because like I'm a food person, and so that was another dynamic where it was like really unsatisfying. It's like, okay, I'm at this like restaurant, I'm loving it, like menu is so cool, I'm really excited about what I'm gonna eat, here's your water, like whack. It sucks. And now there's there's a whole another world out there, which I think is incredible, and it does go a long way.
I saw a video of yours that I really related to, where you were talking about after having so much sobriety, you feel like you've lived through every situation and every type of event sober. And I know it's drastically different, like going to a party, a wedding, a wine tasting, all these different events that we're faced with that sometimes we have to do for social obligation. Yeah. What do you feel like was the hardest event for you to go to?
I mean, you know, bachelor parties presented some challenges, definitely. Usually, I guess it depends a little bit on the bachelor party, but to generalize, like, there was definitely a few of them. I remember one of them, I straight up, like, I was invited to. It was in Vegas. It was a bunch of college friends. I think I was like, I don't know, maybe I was 8 months in or something like that, give or take. And I was like, you know, I love these dudes. I know it's gonna go down. I can't do it, man. Like, and like they told me what happened. They're like, it was better that you didn't go, and like it was like the most Vegas like bachelor party ever. Like, you know, like people barely making it to the airport, like to leave, like, you know, all the stuff, which is like, it's cool, you know, but it was like, that was not gonna be my scene. Yeah. So I don't know if I can pick. I think bachelor parties are tough, but like, to be honest, like more of the like, the nights out with your friends who are really like your people, you know, like these are my friends. I love these people. And then when it gets past that point and it's like, I'm not, you know, we're not in the same wavelength here, you know, like you guys are somewhere else and I'm over here and you're just not a real participant. And I think those have been the hardest also because they're more frequent, right? Like I've done a lot of, like stateside. I lived abroad. I went to grad school, you know, like, I went to grad school in Barcelona and I like, you know, I definitely had those moments there as well. And so I think those are the hardest, you know, when you're just like, where you, like, I love you, where you are in this moment, in this scene we're in, and where I am, like, it's incongruent, you know? Like, there's no, like, I can't bridge that gap, you know?
Yeah. Do you feel like that's the point where you kind of decide to go home, or?
Yeah, usually I would, like, either I go home, I found an activity that was, like, or, like, something that was, like, distracting enough, you know, or engaging enough for the moment. Yeah. But usually when it comes to that point, there's like the clock is ticking. You know? It's like, all right, I'm either going to leave now or I'm going to leave in 20 minutes, but I'm leaving. Yeah. You know, like, and like, that's okay. You know, there's nothing wrong with it. But I think that's why when I think about like the two meta buckets of socializing for people that are not drinking, whether it's like for the night or more as a more permanent part of their life, there's like, how do you socialize with other people who are drinking when you're not drinking? And then the other bucket is doing things with people who are not drinking, right? Like being in a social. So I think that first bucket is, it's made a little easier by some of the drinks and by the fact that more people are doing this. Yeah. But even so, you're always going to run into these moments and these, like, not only moments, just like whole, you know, there can be whole events, whole nights, whole get-togethers that are just like, it's incongruent, man. You know, like, there's nothing you can do. Like, you know?
Yeah, I think it's hard to decide like when it's time to go home, and that's something I've struggled with, and I feel like I'm getting better at assessing the situation and realizing it's no longer serving me anymore. But I feel like in the past I've definitely overstayed where I'm trying to almost prove like, oh, it's fine. I'm still fine. I can still be part of it. But there's a certain point where it's just not necessary anymore. And you are just on such a drastic different wavelength that is almost uncomfortable for both parties. Yeah. So I definitely relate to that. And you mentioned being in Barcelona. Do you feel like what do you think the non-alcoholic scene is like internationally? Do you feel like that was more difficult or more understanding over there?
Well, I think it's quite better now. When I lived there, it wasn't great. It was still like a novelty. That was like 2014 to 2017. So it really, you didn't have the kind of expansion that we've seen in the last few years. They do always have, like, Europe has been and is quite good on, like, non-alcoholic beers. So that is, that's an option for people who are, like, comfortable with that. But, you know, the downside is that certainly in Spain and in lots of places in, like, Southern Europe, like, it's very, the custom and culture part of it is very interwoven, and so it is a little challenging that way, right?
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of how it's different than here. I mean, it's also very totally interwoven here. I think there's a little more of, like, you know, you have, like, some older cultures there, and then you have a little bit more of, like, tradition in some moments, like in Spain, in Barcelona, a lot of on Sundays, a lot of people will do what they call, like, tomando el vermut, which just means literally, like, I'm gonna drink vermouth, but what it also means is, like, you're sort of sitting around with your people. It's often your family. Often it happens outside in kind of a cafe, and you're doing, like, a people watching / like, shooting the breeze, and, like, you know, tough to do it without the vermouth part.
Yeah,
you could try, but I don't know.
Okay. Very interesting. No, I was just curious because I know I follow a lot of people from the UK that are on the scene, but other than that, I really have no idea about where the rest of the world is with it. And I do know it's definitely more, like, I think in America it's more binge drinking at nighttime, whereas maybe in Italy or France or Barcelona they might be having a glass of wine with lunch is a lot more common and things of that nature. So definitely just was curious with that. But then you're starting this supper club as well. Can you tell me a little bit about that and your background with cooking?
So for the first part of my career, I was a chef. I, like, fell in love with cooking in college, and then I went to culinary school after college, and then I worked in different restaurants and restaurant groups and catering companies, and then I kind of started to move towards entrepreneurship. So some friends of mine came to me with a concept called Birch Coffee, and so I helped them. We launched that and kind of grew it a bit, and then I migrated. So my journey is basically, like, chef, entrepreneur. Then I went to business school abroad, and then I became like consultant to entrepreneurs in the startup world and also in corporate innovation. But yeah, and I still do a little bit of freelance work as a chef because I love it, and or I love cooking. I just didn't want to do it as my full-time job anymore. So this is Sober Supper Club is a little bit of, like, mixing of all, like, different things for me, but the motivation is, like, okay, how can you get people to connect, right, when they're not drinking? What are, like, environments, activities, motivations, and to me, a dinner party is a nice environment. Because it's low, it can be low pressure if you set it up the right way, right? And food is, of course, like, the great, like, connector, right? Like, it's not an original thought I'm having. Like, you know, lots of people have written about this, but it's true, right? Like, everybody has some attachment or relationship to food, and you can relate in that way very well. And so, it was a little bit of an opportunity to find, like, okay, and also that kind of adult piece of it, right? Like, where now we have access to some of these drinks, and so you can actually have a whole meal with, like, really great, sophisticated, non-alcoholic drinks that, like, work with food. And so it's all possible now. And so, yeah, my idea is to sort of, like, have this concept be a place where they can come and have those, like, cool experience, not, you know, low pressure, but meet other people, have fun, have a great meal that's, like, adult and modern, right?
Yeah.
And and like have this kind of like broader experience that way, right? And I think the other thing that I'm doing is I'm making it very bespoke. So before people come, they have like a little questionnaire to fill out, and the questionnaire is tailored to try to understand, like, yes, how they eat, but also like, do they have any emotional connection to like specific food experiences? How do they feel about the different NA drinks? What are they comfortable with? What are they not comfortable with? And then trying to understand a little bit more of like what's their motivation for coming to this, so that we can like build the whole experience around those people, because in the end it's not about me, it's about them, right? I'm just facilitating.
That's amazing that it's so customized, and the attention to detail, because I know a lot of people have varying opinions and capabilities within the non-alcoholic drinking space. Some people really can't have the 0.5 drinks or kombucha even, or the taste triggers them, or they can have certain drinks but not others. So that's great to have everybody be comfortable right off the bat and know exactly what they're getting into.
Yeah, I think it's a big, it's a challenge for some people also who are like, they're not comfortable with a non-alcoholic, like a de-alcoholized product. Like you said, things that are 0.5% or below, right? But just because either that trace amount they're not comfortable with, or the taste, right, is triggering, or whatever it is, they're just, it's a no-go, right?
Yeah.
So for those people, you got to have other options, and the category is big enough now that you do have a lot of options who are, they're completely alcohol free. They've never been, they've never developed alcohol, right? And a lot of them are very good.
Yeah. I think it's neat too, having that experience. So with my drinking, I was pretty young when I got sober, so I never got to have the experience of having like a nicely paired wine with a dinner or anything like that. Like I was out here chugging $10 bottles of wine. Like I knew like Sutter Home or 19 Crimes was pretty
Carlo Rossi
fancy, or like just straight up plastic tequila type of thing. So I never got to have that experience where it's like set for that particular meal. And that is one thing. I just went to a bachelorette party where they had a sommelier come in with cheese, and obviously I was not able to have the wines. And I was thinking about that, like I never got to have an experience where he was talking about the different tastes with the cheese. I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. So that's really nice that you get to create that experience for people.
Yeah, I feel like for some people it sounds pretentious, but it's really not, right? Like food, when it's paired with the right drink, whatever that drink is, does enhance the food experience, right? And the food enhances the drink experience. So you can break it down to something as simple as that. Wine is obviously the traditional, right, standing, but like now, there's all these NA options. Actually, Sam and I from Third Place Bar did an event with Shorley and with Derek Brown from Positive Damage Inc. in October. That was like an NA wine tasting, and we had a little bit of pairings with each one, and then kind of just like exploring the different options. It's cool. She's doing another one, I think, this month. There's one at City Winery, and there's also one at Platform by James Beard. And so, if people are into that, like I recommend, there's some really great options out there, including stuff that's not, that's never been alcoholized, right? So it's like alcohol-free products. There's Proxies, a lot of which I like. There's a company called Non, which is really cool. There is Muri, which I like, quite a few of them. Three Spirits has a brand doing... God, I forgot the name of it, but Three Spirits has like a related brand that's that has a few products which are really good. So For Better and For Worse also is a little bit of a sub. They have some cool bottles, and there's a bunch more out there. So I really like whatever you want. I think it's a cool experience for people to have. And,
definitely.
yeah, it's adult, like, it doesn't have to be adult and like pretentious, but yeah, like you're an adult, right? Like, you deserve to be treated like an adult, whether or not you choose to drink.
Exactly. Yeah, I think New York in general does a really good job. Almost everywhere now, I feel like, has options.
Yeah.
But definitely not the same as being to like a curated event where it's meant to go with the meal. But when you were in the food industry, being a chef, do you feel like, or the restaurant industry rather, do you feel like it was hard to get sober? Were you still a chef while you were getting sober? Like, what was that experience like?
Yeah, I was actually. I went to culinary school my first year, which, is usually not, like, major changes are usually not. But I had already decided that before I decided to get sober, so it was like already in motion.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. I think it's really a little bit easier now, and it's gotten like progressively easier.
Yeah.
But there's definitely a drinking, culture. Like, a shift drink is part of the deal in restaurants, right? Like, you do your shift, you get a drink, and oftentimes that kind of spins out after that, right? And then you definitely have a fair amount of people that are, using to different degrees, sometimes high degrees. Although I think that's less and less now, right? Like, the restaurant industry has like changed and evolved a lot, and like I think sort of like cleaned up a little bit since the days of like of like before, right? But yeah, it's like, it's out there, and also there's the fact that like you're working with food, and so yeah, the parallel bit of that is beverage, and for most people that beverage means alcoholic beverage, and then of course there's the tasting part of it, and traditionally that's been wine, and so like it's in there, man. It's it's in there, but it can all be done. Like, that's the I did it. I'm not special. Other people can do it. Yeah.
Why did you decide to get sober, and what was your journey like there? I know you were pretty young as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't working, the drinking and the drug use wasn't working for me. I was messy, very messy. I did a lot of damage in different relationships, and but yeah, more like it just like internally I was at a point that like I couldn't keep doing what I was doing. I think the motivation was a relationship that I was in was kind of the spark, but the bigger picture was like like I couldn't keep doing what I was doing, right? It wasn't working for me. And like I don't think my life wasn't gonna go forward if I kept keep doing the same thing. It wasn't working. So that was for me. I think people have lots of different motivations now, right? And that's great, right? Like, whatever, each person is different and unique, and I think should make the decisions based on whatever makes sense to them. But it wasn't feasible for me to keep going the way I was. I had a bottom, definitely. Not everybody has that now, right? And that's cool, but that was my experience.
No, I think it's awesome that as you said, since the rise of even the non-alcoholic industry has also been the rise of just sober curiosity and people getting sober for different reasons, whereas before, a couple of years ago, if somebody was sober, it most likely was because they hit a bottom. It was very few and far between that I feel like somebody just wasn't drinking, where now I think that's becoming more and more popular. So I think that's great that people now don't have to get to that point to realize maybe it's just not beneficial for my life.
Yeah. I've had a few people that I know actually come up to me with that kind of like, like I'm just not... Like, I'm just taking some time off. I don't know if this is really working in my life anymore. They don't have a problem. It's not, no major consequences other than, the usual ones of
Yeah.
some hangovers and stuff like that. But yeah, there's I don't know, I'm just reevaluating it, and I think that's cool. Yeah, like this whole awareness around it has caused more people to just sort of evaluate in one way or another, like, what do I want to do? What's my relationship to alcohol?
Yeah.
And for some people that means nothing, and for other people it means, I'm gonna do something.
Yeah, a little less. And then you mentioned too that fitness has been a part of your journey too. What do you feel like has been the most helpful?
Well, I think, for me, I've always been, like, my family of origin is very active. So I learned how to ski. I learned how to skate when I was young. I learned how to surf. I played every sport, like, imaginable as a kid. I played soccer, baseball, hockey, basketball. Well, not every sport imaginable, but quite a bunch of them, right?
Yeah.
So I played them all. I love them, right? So I have this, like, foundation in that. And actually, I definitely found, the typical story of, like, at a certain point in, like, college and young adulthood, like, that faded. My participation in activity faded.
Yeah.
Because I was doing more partying, and that was, that kind of, like, took over priority. And then, of course, like, the effects of it make it less possible to, like, do. So then, when I, like, got sober, I even before that, I was kind of I was getting back into fitness. Like, I was, but when I got sober, I really, like, it turned into, like, a big activity for me. I think, I kind of do a lot. That's not necessarily for everybody, but, like, for me, that works. I like, I think everybody should, whether you're like drinking or not drinking, like, people should be moving their bodies as much as possible. And I think in a baseline for people who are not drinking, whether you're, like, getting sober serious or you're just taking a time off, like, get out of your head and your emotions and in your body is, like, very helpful, right? So, like, whatever the activity is, running is a great one for endorphins and for your brain. I think, playing games that you love is, like, another way to rediscover, like, things that you love that are not, not just drinking, right? Like, things that excite you and are fun and, like, are not, right? So I got back into soccer, like, really seriously when I got sober, and that's been amazing. I've had, like, incredible experiences, been on a lot of teams. I still play now, so that's, like, a big pillar of my life. But I think finding whatever it is for people, like, just get in your body, because, like, especially when you start, for a lot of people, the head is very messy, and it plays a lot of tricks. And we spend a lot of time there now, so it's like getting out of that and into your body and into something that, like, works for you. It's obviously good for your general, like, physical wellness, but also for, like, your mental and emotional wellness. Like, it goes a lot.
Yeah, I really like that, where the movement is more important than the actual sport, or like, I've never been the person that's, like, going to the gym with a notepad and pen. Like, never say never, but I more so prefer, like, going for a super long walk or a run or doing some type of activity, rather than, I think a lot of people get intimidated because they picture fitness, like, you need to be that person in the gym all day every day. But that's certainly an option if that works for you, but it's not the only way to be fit and healthy.
Yeah, and it all takes time, you know what I mean? Like, if people who, like, don't want to start because they're intimidated, like, oh, I won't get to that place, like, whatever, like, whoever you're looking at or whatever you're looking at, like, they didn't get there by, like, magic, like, it's a progress over time, day by day. You do a little bit, you get better, your body learns, like, so just start. Whatever to, like, just start, like, and if it's walking, running, I think it's cool, like, whatever works for people. is what they should do, you know? But I think it's really, 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 really important. And it's another way of like, as I said, like for Double Zero Social Club, like we're sort of focused on like helping to solve the social problem for people. But I think that more broadly comes into the category of like, okay, you decided to stop drinking either as like a very long-term decision or like a more serious decision, or you decided I'm going to reduce or whatever it is and everything in between.
Yeah.
Now, what do you do with your life and your time, you know? And that's a big, because like, yeah, that's a big what, you know? Especially if you've been doing it for a long time, like you're programmed, you know, to operate a certain way. And now you're going to find yourself with more space. And so like, how do you, you know, and that's the point in the end, right? Like, have a better life in one way or another.
Yeah. I think it's great that you also have content on your platform to help give advice. And I saw some about the holidays. Like, I know that's really, really hard for people around Thanksgiving, Christmas time, and New Year's especially. Like, that's a really big block where I think a lot of people end up relapsing or having just issues, depressions, whatever it may be. What was your idea behind that content, and how exactly do you go about bringing that to light?
Yeah, I want to do more of it. That's like in the sort of guides, tips, inspiration, you know, bucket of like what we want to provide people. So I want to do more of it. But basically, yeah, I think about problems that occur in sobriety for people, and the holidays is definitely like an obvious one, you know, especially if you're just starting, like, what do I do with myself in the holidays?
Yeah.
And how do I manage these different situations? And plus, like, holidays, depending on who you are, you know, family can be stressful for some people. Not for everybody, but yeah, I mean, for a lot of people, right? People. Yeah, it can be stressful, right? And so how do you manage those situations and kind of like, what can you do? What are some tips, right? So we try to provide people with stuff like that. And then in general, yeah, it's more along that like kind of what are you doing with your life now, right? So I just saw a post from someone today. I was talking about like, you know, like, okay, you're not drinking. Like, what do you do on a night in New York City, right? And so answering questions like that, right?
Yeah.
Finding people ways to like helping with people with like ways to date, like ideas for dates, ideas for nights out with like your friends, right? Ideas for holidays when you're celebrating, little tips and bits, right? Like, what can you do? Here's a drink you can make. Here's maybe a couple tips on how to handle a slightly emotional, dramatic family situation or something, right?
Yeah.
Because people get overwhelmed by that sometimes, understandably. So, yeah, we're trying to just give as much in that regard as we can, and sort of help people through those moments.
Yeah, I've seen it's like a real TikTok. They've made everything with it where it's always a stitch where a girl's like, people that don't drink, what exactly do you do?
Yeah.
And then people
Sober. Yeah. And I was like, the questions were, what am I going to do with myself? How will I have fun? Right? Yeah, and how will I like socialize with it? There were many other questions, but like those were three of them, right? And then I like evaluated them actually, and I was like, so my position is that it's impossible to have fun without alcohol. That seems, when I like actually evaluated it, I was like, that seems false and crazy, right? Like, because, you know, like alcohol is one tool that people use, right? And like, certainly it goes back a while, but actually human beings have been around for a long time and in our current form for like, you know, a few 100,000 years, actually more than that, a few million years. And like for most of that time, alcohol didn't exist. So it's impossible to have fun with that. Like, not true, right? So, all those things, like, but it felt daunting though. You know, I was like, okay, this seems like I have a real position here, but like it's kind of scary, right?
Yeah.
So, but in the end, yeah, I mean, what, you can't have fun with alcohol? Like, I don't think so. Not true, you know?
Yeah. I think it's scary though to think, oh, I can't have fun without alcohol. Like, once you realize that those are actually your beliefs, because I think you're just so unaware of yourself, at least for me when I was drinking, that I never actually stopped to think that I equate any fun with alcohol or any comfortability in a social situation with alcohol. And when you realize that if you cannot be comfortable whatsoever without it, that is really an issue.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people that don't really identify as having a drinking problem or may not have a drinking problem whatsoever would also say that they couldn't have fun or have a good social situation with alcohol, which is definitely interesting, that our society has gotten to that point where it's almost brainwashed people to think, even if they don't have an issue, that a situation won't be fun unless there's alcohol there.
Yeah, I wrote a kind of nerdy innovation article about this last year. Not about this exactly, but basically about the the distinction of like the way alcohol is very tightly woven into our social fabric, right? And I'm not even like, I'm not criticizing that. I'm just saying like, this is how it is, you know? And so then if you think about what does alcohol do for people in social environments, some of it you can, some of those things that it does in the innovation world, we call it jobs to be done, right? Like some of those jobs to be done, you can replicate or you can defer by not drinking, but some of them you can't, you know? Like alcohol is a super powerful tool in social environments. Like it does a lot of things, right? Obviously there's like the physiological effect of reducing people's inhibition and giving them to be honest, it's a pseudo courage, but it gives people courage, right? It reduces your inhibitions, which is the big one. Then of course, like there's a social currency to it. Like, come have a drink with me. There's an invitation to like hang out with me, get to know with me. There's another one that's like, come misbehave with me, basically, right?
Yeah.
And that one, kind of harder to, like, you can't really replicate it.
Yeah.
Right? And there's quite a lot more. Like, there's of course like the celebration, the gift, the you know, the gesture of like honoring people, right? Like here, you know, like for your birthday here, you know, like so there's a bunch more, and like that's sort of part of my point about creating these alternative social experiences is like, sure, some you can navigate without the alcohol, but some kind of not, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to drop your inhibitions for one, right? With a non-alcoholic drink. So, you know, you got to find another alternative.
Yeah, no, I'm in the same boat where I think it was Grant said it on here that I don't have a problem with drugs and alcohol. I just have a problem with drugs and alcohol. Right. Like, I don't think it's bad that other people that don't have issues are using it, doing it, whatever. However, I do definitely think that it's seeped in so much that if you are utilizing alcohol, drugs probably shouldn't, but whatever you're doing, that you need to find a way that you can also have fun with it and without it.
Yeah.
Just because if you're so heavily relying on anything in life, I think that's when it becomes unhealthy.
Yeah. I'm really big on that message also. Like, you know, I'm not here, and Double Zero Social Club is not here to tell people not to drink.
Yeah.
I think everybody, like, go do whatever you want and whatever works for you. But if you do make a decision to say, okay, like, I want to take some nights off, I want to reduce, I want to, or I just don't want to drink and use drugs anymore at all, like, that's sort of where we're here for, right? Like, but yeah, that's cool. Like, do what works for you. And I'm not here to evaluate that for anybody. Like, there's a whole slew of people and organizations and businesses that can help with that, and a lot of them are really great. And beyond that, like, I'm not anti people drinking. You
Yeah.
know, like people should do whatever works for them, and that's cool. Like it doesn't work for me, but that's all right.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's my choice, you know.
Yeah. What do you feel like is your next goal for 00 Social Club other than your supper parties? Do you have any big plans for 2024?
Yeah, so we got a website going. So we want to build that out, and I'd love to have more of the creators and the brands and the businesses kind of like getting on there and submitting forms about their event so that we can get it out there. Right now I do a lot of the hunting, which is fine, but you know, of course we want some this way. So we want to grow that, and I want to grow more, find more brands, find more businesses, find more venues, like, you know, find more going on. So I'm openly active and looking for that. I think the other one is community. So we've got this community going. I literally just started it on Geneva, and my ultimate goal is actually to get people to find each other like in real life and not on the internet.
Yeah.
But the internet is a great tool to like to distribute and promote and make that initial interaction. And then
Definitely.
I think the community part of it, where people can actually chat with each other and go back and forth and share, is like, it's like a step to getting to know to someone. And then it makes it, of course, more like you're more excited and more comfortable about going to do something in the real world. So
Great that because of Instagram, TikTok, I don't know, Twitter, whatever people are using to make connections, but then to actually get in real life and meet people is extremely important, especially I think since the pandemic. It's great to use technology and utilize it to meet other people in the sober space, but get out in real life and meet those people. And because of your platform, people are able to do that. So love what you do. And thank you so much for coming on and getting real.
thank you for having me. It's been awesome.
Thanks for tuning in and getting real with us. Podcasts will be posted every other Wednesday on Spotify and YouTube. Please reach out via DM if you want to chat.